What do you do if you believe that someone is stalking you? Let's have this conversation. Stick around. This is obviously a really broad subject because stalking can be everything from something malicious all the way down to just somebody stalking you on social media. I'm not really talking about non-threatening types of things, but stuff that could be a problem. At some point, you probably stalked your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend's Facebook page from high school. Who knows? People do that stuff all the time, but we want to talk about something that's a lot more serious. Being stalked is a real thing. A lot of predators have stalked their prey for quite some time before they seized upon them. This is a normal part of the world we live in. Prey and stalking happens out in the wild, and it happens with people. If you believe that you are being stalked, the first thing you need to do is answer a very important question. And that question is this just a feeling that I'm having, or is there some actual clues and evidence that point to this being a reality? I'm reminded of a movie I watched on Netflix last week that I think goes along with this video very well. I'm not going to make this video about that movie. I just think that movie gives us a really solid example that's not very outlandish, and that movie is called The Watcher. And there's probably going to be some spoilers to the movie in this video. But one of the first things that the protagonist was experiencing when she moved with her husband to Romania was that every time she looked out her window, the neighbor across the street was always seemingly looking at her and watching her. It was quite creepy. Every time she looked out her window, she saw him. She felt like he was looking right at her. And at one point in the movie, she just threw her hand up and waved. And a few seconds later, he waved back. That's a bit of a problem. But I just thought that was one good example of how, she identified for herself that she was in fact being watched by somebody else. We want to go with our gut instinct, but there's also a side of life to where you want to have some legit type of evidence to the fact that your feelings are true. Some people just live in a state of fear all the time, and I don't want this video to feed into that. I think we should have some legit reasons to feel like we're being stalked. I feel like there should be some minor evidences at work around us. It may be the fact that you straight up caught somebody watching you. There's different ways you can do that, but you may actually catch people watching you. And this leads to my next point. If you believe you're being watched or you're being stalked by someone, your natural day-to-day alertness needs to go up. It needs to go up a little higher. This is something I want to say with regards to a person's level of awareness. Your awareness of your surroundings should never be a grievous thing to you. Okay, if your awareness leads to you being constantly in a state of fear or in an unrelaxed state all the time, your awareness level is out of control. That's not how life works. That's not how intuition works. In fact, operating in that kind of fear can backfire. Let me give you an example in the wild. Okay, it's very hard to sneak up on a deer. They just have a natural, innate type of awareness of everything going on around them and noises. They're tuned in. They're animals. They have probably certain instincts that we may not even have as people. But I believe that we too should have a base level of instinct with regards to our surroundings. But deer come in my backyard all the time, and they'll be back here just grazing. I wouldn't be able to walk up on them. They'd run away. But if I pull up in the driveway and they hear my car door shut from a distance, they'll be grazing, and then they'll look up. You'll see this zone that they're in, okay? So if you believe you're being stalked, and if you believe that somebody's got you on their radar, your day-to-day alertness may just come up a little bit. Not to the point to where you're fearfully miserable everywhere you go, but like you are in a state of anticipation because something don't seem right. You might be a little more attentive when you're getting out of your car and going in your house at night. You might be a little more attentive when you're walking across a parking lot into a store. Your level of alertness increases according to your innate senses and the realization that something may be going on. And I'm not saying that your life will be like this forever. It may just be a seasonal thing until you can get peace again. But if you've tuned into the fact that you believe you are being stalked, well, naturally your alertness and awareness goes a little higher, but without losing your mind. One of the greatest things that lends to a proper response in the world of warfare is anticipation. So if you believe you're being stalked, well, your anticipation level needs to go up. You're now operating in the mindset that you could possibly be watched by someone, and that's just going to up your game a little bit. I saw this in the film The Watcher. This woman becomes very suspicious of this guy, and she starts paying attention more to things. And there was a point in the film where she picked up on the fact that she was being followed, and it was a pretty intense situation. She not only bypassed her gut feeling creeped out, but she had a pretty good reason to believe he was watching her. And now she was more tuned into his movements and his activities. Now, the one mistake that her character made, and this is a mistake that people can make, is that the people who feel like they're being stalked will become stalkers themselves, and that can backfire. That happened with the main character in this film. That happens with people in real life. They feel like they're being stalked, so they go overboard and they too become the stalker, and that can create problems. In the movie, the antagonist, who was the supposed stalker, ended up calling the police on behalf of the grief that he was receiving from the protagonist, and that kind of stuff happens, and that can really cloudy up the situation. The next thing that needs to happen is you need to be mindful of your routine. Be mindful of your routine. Be mindful of things that you find yourself doing on a repetitive basis day to day. And most of us has a routine, and there is nothing wrong with having a routine. But in seasons like this in life, it may be wise to change things up a little bit. If I believe somebody is stalking me, I want to make it very hard for them to figure out every little thing I'm doing. This can lead to the situation coming to a close, or it can lead to them rearing their ugly head sooner. It's very hard for them to be sure of their opportunity if they don't know when that opportunity is going to be available. Which leads to my next point. If somehow or another this thing escalates to the point to where it's getting weird and you have some definitive things to point to, it may be time to go ahead and contact the authorities and notify someone. You need to notify the people closest to you anyway, whether it's a spouse or a guardian. They need to know if you're feeling this way or if something like this might be going on in your life. But if this thing starts to escalate to the point to where there's some things you can point to, it might be time to contact the authorities. This is where restraining orders and things like that come in. And a lot of times this really helps because now there's no more element of surprise. There's too much light shining down on the situation. These predators want to operate in secret. They want to get in and get out. They want to do their business and get going. And at this point in the game, it could escalate and make things worse. But if it's going bad anyway, if the direction of this situation is already getting worse and worse, then why not go ahead and start alleviating some issues by bringing the authorities into it? And lastly, you know where I'm going with this. At the end of the day, you've got to be prepared to defend yourself. I say this in every video of this nature. There's so many things we can do to avoid being a victim or being in these situations. But sometimes, even when you do everything you know to do, you may have to physically defend yourself. And that's where this can become very subjective because a lot of people have different philosophies and beliefs on how they should do that. I'm just telling you, if somebody is going to attack you, you have to be prepared to do something. I'm not going to use this video to talk about what weapons or tactics or strategies you should use. We'll use the comment section for that, and you can review a lot of the other videos that I have where I review gear and I talk about its effectiveness or lack thereof. I carry a firearm, I carry pepper spray, and a knife every day. I've got one tool for distance, lethal means. I've got another tool for up close, lethal means, and I have a less than lethal option. In this film, all of the suspicion and the gut instincts that the protagonist had about this gentleman that was watching her turned out to be exactly what they seemed to be. He was a serial killer. He had been working in the area and he was watching her, and they did have a physical confrontation and she did have to defend herself. Stalking is real. Many, many, many people have been stalked before the worst happened. I'd like to ask, have you ever been stalked? Have you ever been in a situation where this was an issue and you had to take similar actions as to what I talked about in this video, I would love for this comment section to blow up with stories and testimonies. I know there's going to be some crazy comments. There always is, but I'm thankful for those relevant comments that actually helps the viewer of this video. As always, thanks for watching. Take care.